Hello, everybody, and welcome to your Thursday edition of the Blood Red podcast, brought to you by the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Theo Squires, and what a week it's been. The sun is shining, and we're all still on a high after Liverpool were crowned Premier League champions last weekend. So much so that we're just a two-man podcast today, I'm afraid. Joe Rimmer dropped out, Paul Gorst was otherwise engaged, and Keith McDonald just couldn't be bothered, could he? Fortunately, Ian Doyle would never let me down. So, how are you, Doyle? At least you're committed to the cause.
Yeah, can I just say you've done the high voice thing again? Why is it so?
I don't know.
Why is the voice so high when you actually start doing the podcast? It's fine, but maybe you're just trying to calibrate it. I'm okay. How are you? There's no one else to ask you.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Where are the others? Just because Liverpool have won the league, they feel as though they're phoning it in now, don't they? Where's the true professionals? Stick to the task. There's still 4 games to go. Let's crack on.
Yeah, we're not rotating at all, are we? We'd go full strength.
No, well, we're not going to Brighton, though, are we? So
yeah, I booked that holiday months ago.
Yeah,
we're all good.
There's one.
But we are live on YouTube, so get your questions and comments in. I think we might need them because, as the podcast graphic says, what next? Now that Liverpool are champions, what is next? Well, I'll tell you what's next. To get the best discount of your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. So as always, thanks to our sponsors, NordVPN. There is no better time to get on board with Nord, as they are now the proud sponsors of a Premier League title-winning podcast. It's a great time.
I don't think we've won the podcast. We've won the Premier League, to be fair.
We've played our part.
Well,
we've been there.
I've been up there every step of the way. Yeah, I was there for all of them. So yeah, that's why I've deserved me Brighton game off. Yeah.
So yeah, as the graphic says, Doyle, what is next? Well, I suppose we should start with trading, as it's one of the few talking points we've had in the last 24 hours. Liverpool made their return for the first time as champions yesterday, back at the AXA. There was a few lovely updates around the place for them, welcoming them as they walked in and on all the updated 20s everywhere, but a few players missing as well.
There were some balloons, weren't there?
Yes, there were some balloons.
Wind, as in reference to balloons, not players.
Yes.
Who are the 3 players missing then?
Conor Bradley,
yes.
Joe Gomez and Tyler Morton.
Well, Conor Bradley, he obviously missed out against Tottenham with a knock that he suffered in training. We were led to believe at the time that he would be back in training. It looks like there's no point taking any chances, but still another couple of days before they play Chelsea, so we'll have to wait and see. Joe Gomez obviously not there, and Tyler Morton wasn't there. We kind of thought he might have been injured because he didn't play for the under-21s last Friday when they played in the Premier League 2 playoff against Manchester City, which they lost 2-1 after extra time. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of been the story of the last couple of weeks at least, is that Liverpool have done well to have so many players available, if we're being honest. Funny enough, not that they actually needed them because they've only been playing 1 game a week certainly since the international break, with the exception of the first game against Everton. Because obviously they're not out of the Champions League and they're out of the FA Cup as well, so they haven't had to arrange games or play them in midweek. So, I just think it kind of underlined, again, great work from the medical team and the sports science team at Liverpool, that they've managed to have so many players available for so many games this season. Also a slight reflection on the change in the way that they play, a bit more control over it. There are always going to be some injuries you can't really do much about, impact injuries, things like that. I think you look at Diogo Jota, that's one where they couldn't really do anything about, and it's still taking him a long time to get over it, and I'm not sure it might be quite a while before we realise or work out exactly what happened to him there. But yeah, it gives Arne Slot, I know we'll touch on it a lot later on in this podcast, good reason to rotate now that he's got players available, and there's no real reason for him to have to go strong every single game, although you do run the risk of, he's not like he's going to play an entire reserve team. There are certain things that I think Liverpool still want to go for.
One of the talking points we are going to have for the next few weeks is still Trent's future. I suppose Connor's knock sort of took the decision away from Arne Slot. He just had to throw Trent back in. But he did well in his, 70, 80 minutes, and you could see how much those celebrations meant to him. Where do you think we stand with that future at the moment?
Who knows? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you look at Real Madrid, and they had a bit of a nightmare at the weekend, didn't they, against Real Madrid? It's a money amount of time before they played each other. Probably in the European Super League, to be honest, where they played Barcelona in the Copa del Rey final, wasn't it? It was the Copa del Rey final, wasn't it? Yeah.
They lost, didn't they?
They lost 3-2, yeah. And they had about 15 players sent off at the end. It's been one of those seasons for Real Madrid. So it depends which way you look at it. If you're Trent, you're going into a club that you know that you're almost certainly going to improve it. The team as well. It looks like Ancelotti might have to stick around for a little bit. the latest we've heard. But we thought he was going to go to Brazil and be their national team coach. I mean, the way these things work, he could end up doing that. But even if Ancelotti goes, Xabi Alonso's going to come in. So I don't think any player going into Real Madrid would have any worries about who's in the dugout. It's just the overall team. So it was a little bit of a reminder, wasn't it, to Trent? That's the first time his experience winning the league in front of fans at Anfield. Obviously, he's won FA Cups and League Cups and the Champions League as well. So he knows what it's like to celebrate a big trophy, but that'll be a special day for him. And might it change? Not so much change his mind. Might it make his mind up? Because we don't know what his mind is at the moment. But might it make his mind up in terms of wanting to stay at Liverpool? Well, it's not going to harm it, is it? Let's be honest. I mean, he's obviously seen that they're a team that are 15 points better than everybody else in the Premier League. And I think if they play anyone other than Paris Saint-Germain at that moment in time in the Champions League, they'd be in the semi-finals now, I think. Although Barcelona v Inter Milan was quite a good game last night. Trent, he'll still... If he hasn't already made his mind up, he'll be more inclined to be looking at staying at Liverpool. But that it's taken this long and he's not really said anything, I think everything points to the fact that he's almost certainly going to leave.
Yeah, like supporters are looking for every hint they can take. Obviously, Linda
Say
Pasuti...
supporters. Journalists
as well. Linda Pasuti obviously did a few on Instagram, but then Kenny Dalglish has done an interview this week and he backtracked a little bit once he got going, but he initially started off by making it sound like it was a done deal. So it's something to keep an eye out on.
Done deal that he's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded like that anyway. Right, obviously we don't know if Conor Bradley will be back for the weekend, but if you were putting yourself in Arne Slot's shoes for a moment, what do you do for these few weeks? Do you go strong? Do you keep all the elite players in, or do you look to the youth players? Do you look to the fringe players?
No, but we're looking to rotate some of them. You look at Harvey Elliott, Potaro Endo, Jarrell, Quansah, Federico Chiesa, Darwin Núñez, players like that. Just let them have a run out. They've all contributed, whether it's on the training ground or during the games, to the title win. Because you forget is that the players spend most of their time on the training ground, where they're playing against these other players. And if you're playing against players of a high quality on the training pitch, when you then go out into the games themselves, you've got far more chance of being able to cope with it than if you're training against me and you, let's be honest. I wouldn't recommend that, to be fair. Not with you. You probably knock
Get
them all out. You probably will be out for the season, with you, clodhopper. I think they've all played the part, and I think they deserve the minutes now. I mean, Elliott and Endo in particular, it's amazing that they've gone all the way through this long in the season and not start a Premier League game. I think they will both play at some point. Chiesa's a bit different. He only needs one more appearance to win a medal, although I suspect that the ones that will get one anyway, they're all going to get one anyway. I think that's a bit of a non-story, he says, having written it about 10 times already. I would expect that. I would expect, in terms of the youngsters, Tally Morton again, if he's got an injury that's in any way serious, he's been so unlucky with the timing of the injuries, because he would have played more games, certainly in the look at the Cup and the League Cup as well. He would have played more times, I reckon, anyway. So whenever there's been an opportunity that looks like he could be playing, he's been injured, so he has been unlucky in that respect. What do you think?
Whether you should look at the fringe players?
Yeah,
I'd like to see a few of them. Get your questions in. We're live on YouTube, and we have got one that is relating to this. It comes into what we're going to discuss anyway, but it was asking if there's any hope for Endo, Elliott or Chiesa getting starts in the next few weeks of the season. We'll go through it one by one. I think we'll start with Harvey Elliott, because obviously Gorsty's spoken to him. It's gone in our standalone. I thought there was some interesting comments in there about his future, where he's saying he obviously wants to stay put, but it might be out of his hands if he's not going to play. He's sort of hinting that he might have to move on. He's been so unlucky not to get these opportunities, because whenever he has been turned to, Plymouth aside, he's made an impact.
Well, you've got to bear in mind he's been there for 6 years now, so it's a long time. And I know he's a massive Liverpool fan, as everybody knows, and he's still only 22. So there's still a lot of time for him. But I think he would have been frustrated because of what happened last season, where he quite clearly did well whenever he played. And Klopp at the end of the season kind of apologised to him, didn't he, saying, publicly saying we should have used him a bit more during the last few weeks when Liverpool fell away. He hasn't really had to do that this season, Slot, because Liverpool have stumbled their way to the title with 82 points after 34 games. And let's not get started on that nonsense again. But yeah, I do think there was more opportunities there for him, and I think he could have played more. I think,
especially when Szoboszlai's looking
well,
tired.
exactly. I mean, I know Curtis Jones has been the person who's come in, and he's done really well. He is if you'd say there's a first choice midfielder of the three of Szoboszlai, McAllister, and Gravenberch, then Jones is like a third and a half, if that makes any sense. You know,
Well, there've been times where he's played all four, hasn't
well,
there?
exactly, yeah. So he's like Aston Villa, I think it was, wasn't it?
City as well.
Yeah, they did. I think he played left wing against Villa, and he played as one of the false nines against City, and then he played at right back for a couple of games as well against Everton and against Fulham. So Curtis is definitely part of that squad. Elliott might not feel as much of one because of the minutes that he just hasn't had in the Premier League this season. So he's at that age where he can still get a couple of good moves out of his career. He's only, as I said before, he's only 22. He's very much still at the start, but he's got 150 games or something like that for Liverpool, and he had a full season playing on loan at Blackburn as well, where he did very well. So he's a player who should be playing all the time, and if he's not playing all the time, he should at least be starting 1 in 3 Premier League games or something like that. There's no way he should be going through an entire season without starting one. So there's obviously something there in the sense that he's just not what Slot wants from a number 10, because he was at the start of the season, he was determined as one of the 2 number 10 options along with Szoboszlai. Obviously, it turns out that Curtis Jones has ended up getting in there as well, but he's just not had the opportunity, and sometimes that happens with players. I mean, it will be interesting to see what Liverpool want in the summer if somebody comes in and says, there's 35 million, because I think he's 35, 40 million. I do think that because of his age and the experience that he's got at his age, and a player like that at that age, he hasn't played every single week, so he's not going to be like burnt out by the time he gets to 28, 29. He had a couple of spells out through injury, and then he wasn't in the team. So he's got the experience without being overexposed. He's got a bit more room in terms of potential. You just wonder where his position is. And if his position is the number 10, which I've always said that I think it is, if he's not getting into this Liverpool team, he may have to go somewhere else, which would be a bit of a wrench for him. And I think for a lot of us who've always enjoyed watching him play, I think we'd be a little bit disappointed as well.
And it's a shame because you see those celebrations. He was like a fan on the pitch. Like you see him waving the corner flag above his head, kicking footballs into the crowd. He was loving every single moment.
Well, that's it. I mean, he has played a part in it. Look at the Brentford game. Came on and helped make a difference with Núñez, and that was a big moment there. Back in, was it January? February? Yeah. It was January, wasn't it? Yeah. That was because they'd had a couple of games where they'd drawn against United and drawn against Forest. And a third successive draw, hardly terminal, but it would have, affected the momentum a little bit at that stage in the season. So I do think that, you mentioned he is a massive fan of Liverpool, and we all know that. But if he's not playing, it's his job, it's his career, and this would probably be the summer if Liverpool are going to part ways with him and go down a different route. This summer would be a good time for him and for the club.
One thing to consider, though, AFCON next year, Salah's going to miss a number of games. I know we've just been saying there, Elliott's more of a number 10, but he has that option on the right wing. And there have been times this season where Slot has rather brought Elliott on at right wing than a Chiesa, for example. So there might be some sense in having a little bit more patience with him. It'll be interesting.
But then if you're him, do you really want to stick around for the possibility of just playing a couple of games around December, January? Then you'd be like, that's what I mean. It's like it is that stage in his career where he's got to start thinking. He's going to have a chat. I mean, he will have a talk with Slot and probably with Richard Hughes, and then just go, right, what's the plan? What's going to happen? What's happening? Where do you want me to be playing? And which players are we thinking of bringing in? And he'll go from there.
We'll move on to Endo now. Obviously, there was a rejected bid from Marseille, was it, in the summer? Probably quite a few people expected him to move on. It didn't happen. He's been brought on a number of times to see out games. He even came on at right back at the weekend, and he's done well, but he's just not getting those starts.
I think if Endo wants to stay, he will. I don't think they'll be pushing to get rid of him, let's put it this way. I think you always need... You can't just have a load of young players, and you can't just have a load of older, stellar players like you look at Van Dijk and you look at Alisson and you look at Salah. You do need players with experience who, mentioned him many times, James Milner. I know Milner was a little bit older, and he'd had his career by that point. I think Endo if he wants to stay, I reckon that they'll keep him. And I don't see any sense in getting rid because he's popular around the training ground. And as you say, he does a very good job. And he played centre-back as well in a couple of games and did very, very well, I thought, because he's played more of his career at centre-back than in centre-mid, which is what a lot of people don't realise that. So I do think that he's somebody who, again, they won't be pushing to get rid of him, I don't think.
And then Chiesa's an interesting one because he's just not had this looking under Arne Slot. It's 33 minutes of Premier League game time. You can say Mohamed Salah, clear front runner there. He's always going to start in those positions. But you still expect to see more of him. The last couple of weeks, Liverpool thrashing Spurs 5-1, doesn't get off the bench. Nunes misses against, was it West Ham? He was left out altogether.
Yeah.
And Chiesa still doesn't get brought on when they're pushing for that late winner. For whatever reason, it's just not quite happened for him.
I think with Chiesa, he was definitely a just-in-case kind of signing in the sense that they didn't spend an absolute fortune on him. And I think it was just in case something happened to Salah or one of the others up front. And I think Liverpool have not got away with it, but they've managed to keep at least 4 of them fit at all stages, I think. Yeah. Sometimes, like now, it's 6 of them, and then you don't need all 6 forwards at one particular point. So, to be fair, let's be honest, it's like Endo and it's like Elliott. I'm amazed he hasn't started a Premier League game. Less amazed about that. I'm amazed he hasn't featured a bit more in the Premier League. But if he's had problems acclimatising, he's had a problem with the intensity, which Slot mentioned in the first half of the season. Maybe he's got up to that now, and they'll just do a big, a soft reset, as they say, in the summer and see how he is. But if teams from Italy come in for him and offer Liverpool the money that they spent on him, I wouldn't be surprised to see him leaving.
It could be a big pre-season for both him and Elliott. Say someone gets injured or they come in and they really impress from day one.
Because there won't be anybody missing for internationals either, will there? They'll be there from the start, which is slightly unusual given the way things have gone over the last couple of years.
It will be interesting to see how Arne Slot does manage the squad for the next few weeks because, as you said, there aren't that many injuries. So if you want Elliott or Chiesa starting, someone's got to drop out. And with Chiesa, if Conor Bradley wasn't injured, he wouldn't have been on the bench against Spurs at the weekend anyway. So it's like, are you really going to leave players out altogether just to give these guys some game time?
Well, Salah will going to want to play all the games because he wants to get his records. As for the others up front, I don't think they'll mind dropping in and out. I think they've done their bit. Alisson will stay in goal, I think. Van Dijk will want to play all the games. You might say Quansah's coming in. For Konate, maybe once or twice. They've been rotating at left back anyway. You mentioned the right backs, and then the midfield is really where, if they fancy it, they can just move things around.
Yeah, so you're rotating. Happy days. We'll move on now to the centre forwards. Actually, I'll first thank Matthew for that question.
You should
I mentioned his name beforehand when I was saying it was.
Does he have a full name?
It just says Matthew DD, but as in 2 letter Ds.
Okay, let's not go down that road.
Yes.
Okay.
So
direct debit, that's what it stands for.
Centre forwards now, Darwin Núñez, Diogo Jota. They're both had to make do with places on the bench last few weeks with Diaz being the centre option. But now the league's won. For me, it would make sense to go back to having a look at them in those striker positions.
But it's no point looking at them now. If they haven't made their mind up by this point, I don't think they ever are going to. I think we're fairly confident in saying that Núñez is going to go in the summer. If somebody comes in with a major, significant bid for him, I don't expect Liverpool to get all their money back. But if
you kept Saudi coming from,
well, the thing is, if you've got to play for 3 years, and in that time you've won the Premier League and the League Cup, and he's played a part in both of them, then you kind of got I'm not saying you got all your money from worth, but if Liverpool do get 50, 60, then you'd say, well, that's fair enough then, isn't it? Because he has contributed. I know he's not done it in terms of goals and assists this season, and for the 3rd season in a row, when it's come towards the last couple of months, he's just not been called upon, which I think is the most telling part of his entire career for me. Liverpool career, I mean, for me. So I do expect him to go. Jota, again, he's another one where there's no real point in looking to move him on because whenever he's fit and fully fit, he always plays a part. Even this season, he's not. Apart from the first couple of weeks when don't forget, he was the first choice striker when the season started. Yeah. Scored the first goal of the Slot era. He's struggled to be fully match sharp, and he's admitted it himself. Again, we mentioned before about his injury he got against Chelsea. We're not quite sure ultimately how that's affected him. But he scored some big goals. Winner against Everton, equaliser at Forest, equaliser against Fulham, and those are three.
And they're against Palace.
Yeah, exactly. And those are 4 massive goals in the season. And so he got the first goal as well up at Ipswich. So he's still proving decisive, certainly in a way that Nunes overall hasn't been, with the exception of that Brentford game. And I think he kind of fits more into the mould of a player that Slot wants as his number 9. But again, I will fully expect Liverpool to be signing somebody in that position in the summer. I think we're all kind of on board with that. I think everybody knows that. And you can't get rid of all of them. You mentioned about Chiesa. You mentioned about Nunes. I'm sure we'll get on to Diaz in a minute. So, yeah, unless some very tempting offer comes in for Jota, I think he'll be staying.
I didn't actually have Diaz written down, but as you brought him up, we might as well talk about him.
Well, yeah, Diaz is an interesting one in the sense that a lot of people thought he was going to go last summer. And when Liverpool were in for Anthony Gordon, even though they weren't, but by the time the news came out, everyone was like, yeah, Diaz is... Not everybody, but I've mentioned this about 10 months ago. It's like rewriting history, like just saying like, oh, Diaz isn't that good. And it's like, well, yeah, he is actually. And once again this season he's done... He tends to start a season very well and kind of, not a dip, but... He starts and ends seasons very, very strongly.
British summertime Diaz is the one.
Yeah. But then he scored a hat trick against Leverkusen when it wasn't particularly hot. Yeah. He scored at West Ham and at Tottenham over Christmas. So I think really over the last 18 months, he's more or less been pretty consistent. When you consider that he spent about 3 months of the season playing down the middle, which is not his favoured position. And when he got shifted back over to the left, when Gakpo got injured against Everton, he suddenly came to life again. And it's like he builds his momentum playing on the left, but then when he plays in the middle, he makes an impact. But then the longer he plays in the middle, it kind of lessens and lessens until he then goes back on the left and then he starts again. But they got an interesting, not decision to make, but actually it is a decision to make because he's going to be 2 years left on his contract this summer. And if they want him to stay, they're going to have to get a new contract sorted for him, I think, because there's no way they want to go down the road of what happened with...
Reports from Colombia about that, weren't there, this week?
Well, I mean, it was the reports, but it was, it was a bit of a stating of the obvious, basically. It's like, not that it's wrong, but, Liverpool are going to talk with Diaz and his representatives about what their future plans are, and if they say he's loved it here, but it's time, he quite wouldn't mind a new challenge, then this is the summer where they look to sell him, and again, that means that they're looking at other players, and I'm sure if that happens, Anthony Gordon's name's going to pop up again.
We'll move on to some of the youth players now. When Liverpool won the league in 2020, I think once it was won, we saw more of Curtis Jones, we saw more of Nico Williams. Harvey Elliott might have had a couple of appearances as well. Are there any of the fringe or youth players that you think we could see a little bit more of in the next few weeks?
Well, Tyler Morton-Train, Yoni, James McConnell have all played, and I think
they're regulars
started games in cup competitions. None of them have played a single minute in the Premier League this season. I would be surprised if any of them started. If Morton's fit, he might get on the bench. But again, I don't really see Slot as being somebody who does stuff just for the sake of it. I think you got to earn your place, and I think he's given Inyoni a couple of games. It was tough at Plymouth. That was a bit of an eye-opener for him, I think. Although I didn't watch the game against City, the under-21s last Friday, but I believe he did quite reasonably well. I mean, you look at someone like Jayden Danns, he might have been featured, but he wouldn't because he would have been out on loan at Sunderland anyway if he'd been fit. So I can't really see any of those really playing. I think don't forget, there's only 4 games to go, and I think the only way that would happen is because the under-21 season's now over and the under-18 season finishes on Saturday against Everton, actually, is if some of the players they just go gig, have a rest, and they put McConnell on the bench or something like that. Because I know, obviously, Slot's a big fan of McConnell. Having singled him out after the game against PSV back in January. Because I think he might have gone out on loan, but they kept him instead. But he hasn't really featured since then.
I could sit against Brighton because you're going to want to go strong away at Chelsea. Your first game since you've won the league.
You're going to against Arsenal.
And then on the last day when you're getting the trophy. But Brighton, a long way to go, Monday night. That could be the time where, you, at the end, give a few of them some minutes or just place in the squad for the younger players. Sticking with that, we have had a comment about the youth players. Kazi asks, how's the academy doing this season? It's not been the best year, has it?
No, I mean, it's been a strange one. We've said many times that academy football is cyclical in the sense that you can have a really good group of players that go through for about 2 or 3, 4, 5 years, and then you can have nothing for 3 or 4 years, or you can have maybe 1 or 2 good players, but it's very hard for them to shine individually if the collective isn't as good. And on top of that, this season Liverpool have had quite a lot of injuries. A lot of the loan players who've gone out have been younger players, in the sense that they've not been 2021, they've been 18, 19, who've therefore left the... I mean, the reality is the under-21s now is more or less most of the players are 19 and under. Yeah. And it means the knock-on effect to that is the under-18s, a lot of them are 16 and 17. Now, for some other teams, that's not the case. I mean, for example, Manchester United this season gone very strong. I think they did it last year as well at under-18 level, where they've played the players who are available rather than moved them up into under-21s, and they've done pretty well. You look at someone like City, who I think it was last year or the year before, they won the Premier League 2, which is the under-21s. They'd won that for a few years, then finished bottom or next to bottom, because that group had either gone into the first team, gone out on loan, or left, because they just reached that age and they're bringing other ones through. And I think there's certainly been a little bit of that for the under-18s for Liverpool this season. Some of the results have looked not good. They've got some good players going forward. I think defensively, when you are coming up against players, if you're 16 or just an under-16 player, under-17 player, you're coming up against players who are just about to go up into the under-21s. When you're that age, the difference in physicality can make a big difference, and I think they've been struggled a little bit with that for quite a few games defensively. Going forward, they've done all right. There's been Joe Bradshaw's one, Josh Sonny Lambie's another one, and there's Ollie O'Connor. I think he's slightly more defensive, not a defensive defender, and so there's been players who've shone now and again, but it's been hard for them at under 18 level. And of course, now that Mark Bridge-Wilkinson, the coach, is leaving, he'd been at the club for 10 years. It'll be an emotional day when they play on Saturday against Everton at Kirkby, because it is an end of an era for them. And the other thing that people have to remember is that you look at someone like Trent, Curtis, those players who come, Jarell Quansah, who've come in through the system, they'll always have a massive affinity for the youth coaches, because they're the ones that they spend an awful lot of time with at those formative years, and they have a massive impact on their game, and not so much their game, but growing up as going from boys to men, to quote a cliche, but that is what happens. And in terms of the under-21s this season for Liverpool, they've started off the season pretty well, beat City 3-1. City have ended up finishing top, which is why Liverpool only just scraped into the playoffs. For those who don't know, the Premier League 2 for the last 2 seasons has been one 26-team league. You don't play everybody. You play 10 teams, 10 at home, 10 away. And then the top 16 then play off, where the first place to 16th and one-off games until you second be 50 until you get to the final. Liverpool got to the quarterfinals last year, got beat by Tottenham. And this time, by finishing 16th, they scraped in to play against City. And they took them to extra time and got beat 2-1. They had... Ngumoa was playing. Obviously, he's played for the first team. I think it was Ngumoa and Yoni McConnell, Isaac Mabea. I think there was 2 others that have had first team experience. I can't remember. So Trent Alexander-Arnold's one. I think there might be another one who's Nallo. So they've all had first. Well, Nallo's was a couple of minutes, unfortunately for him. They've all had first team experience this season. They all played in that game, but it's been difficult because you've had players who've gone out on loan, as I said before, players who've had to move up from the under-18s to the 21s a bit ahead of time, and then they've struggled a little bit in that, and as a result, the under-18s have struggled. So it has been a tough one this season at the academy, but ultimately it's about getting players into the first team. It doesn't really matter what the results are. And if one of these players that's played at the moment can actually push on and get into it, then this won't be a wasted year, because it never is.
It'll be an interesting summer for them because no international tournaments, so Slot's group is going to be strong from the off. What space is there going to be for the youngsters there? You can have a load coming back from loans like Owen Beck, Jayden Dans, Basetic. So it's like, who can really stand out there apart from like Enyone, maybe Ngumoa? It's hard to see who will go on the tour to Asia.
That's an interesting point, actually, because, yeah, you're right. They will all be together. I mean, you mentioned Basetic, and he's somebody who's, by all accounts, has done rather well at Las Palmas in Spain. I know one person keeps on sending me videos of him playing really well and saying, "Look at him." But he's playing in a team that's fighting against relegation, so it's a very, very different game, a very different experience to play in a Liverpool team that's fighting at the other end of the table. So, yeah, I think we've also got to remember Basetic. It's been 2 years now since he. In fact, it's more than 2 years since he got the injury that meant he didn't play against Real Madrid in the Champions League, and that's when he basically didn't. I think the following season he featured about 2 or 3 times, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then
he played in Lask, didn't he? And then that might have been his only start.
And then there was another. He came on against Tottenham, didn't he? There might have been another
Leicester
one.
in the cup.
That's
earlier,
it. Yeah. So he's not hardly played for Liverpool in 2 years, and since then they got a new manager, and they've won the league. So it's unbelievably hard for any of these players to get into the team, especially if they've been away. I mean, I've always been of the opinion that, or certainly the tradition was that if you went out on loan from Liverpool, that was it. You were never going to make it there. Since then, Elliott, Bradley, Quansah, they've all kind of booked that trend and shown what is possible. But I think
depends the age you are when you go out.
Yeah, and I think this season it's going to be tough for the ones who've gone out. And I'm even counting Ben Doak in there. It's going to be tough for them to get into the slots thinking, because unlike a lot of the others, Jurgen Klopp was there for years and knew about them beforehand. Slots probably hardly have seen any of these play. So what can he do? And as you mentioned, if they're going out to Asia with not many of them, then it's going to be very, very difficult.
And going through those names there, well, I think Beck could go as a third choice left back. But then if they sign someone and they haven't moved someone on, look at him even less. Ben Doak depends on what happens with the forwards, who's getting moved on, but then he could be potentially sold to raise funds to go for somewhere.
Well, this is the thing, is that they've got quite a few there who would get, if not massive money, they get some money. You mentioned Beck, you mentioned Doak, there's also Lewis Koumas, they're the three. We already mentioned Nat Phillips, yeah? Nat Phillips, who could keep Derby up. He got the winner, didn't he? Exactly, yeah. So he's 28 now.
He's due a testimonial next year.
Is he?
Yeah, he joined the academy, didn't he, in 2016?
Wow, that'd be amazing. Let's hope that he sticks around long enough for that. They don't do testimonials anymore, do they?
No, but really. His career is very different, isn't it, to the players that are on like 6 figures a week or whatever. Maybe they can bring it back just for Nat Phillips.
Yeah.
Get Reece Williams alongside him for it.
Well, he's had a tough... He's another one who went out on loan and he's ended up being relegated with Morecambe. So, again, it just shows that the career path of football isn't always straightforward.
Chelsea now, they're next up. Possible guard of honour. I think a few fans are looking forward to that, especially if Caicedo and Lavia are playing. But yeah, you're looking forward to the food at least.
I'm looking forward to the food. Oh, the food is amazing at Old Trafford. No, it's not. At Stamford Bridge. Yeah. I always say the story about one of the first games I ever did. In fact, I think it was the first Premier League game I ever covered was Chelsea against Everton in February 2000. So that's just over 25 years ago, which, considering only 21, is quite good going.
That's before a number of these members of our sports desk were even born.
Yeah. And Ken Bates was still the owner, and we didn't get given any food, and the only thing we got was a polystyrene cup with a tea or coffee. Right, which now seems hilarious compared to... And then when Abramovich then came in, first thing he did was feed the media. Therefore, they're more likely to be nice to us. And as shallow as that sounds, it worked for a very long time. But the good thing is that the food is still great there. So do we have to talk about the football? The Guard of Honour is interesting, I think, because it's not compulsory, is it?
No.
But it would be very, very, very small-minded of them not to do it.
I can't recall anyone not doing it before.
Yeah, I mean, Man City did it for
some of them did.
Apart from Bernardo Silva, they did it. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. I think Arsenal will do it definitely. And Palace definitely will, because there's a chance that Palace could have won the FA Cup, but then they'd just be clapping each other at that point. They'll be made up. And I think Brighton will. I do think Chelsea's probably the only one that you might, just from my viewpoint, that they might go, I'm not sure. Because I would imagine, not that the players won't want to do it, but can you imagine if Chelsea's players line up? The home fans are going to go absolutely spur, aren't they? And let's call our producer Ian into this. What's your view? What's your view?
I think Chelsea will do it because the manager will. But do
you think the fans will go Spur?
Oh yeah,
they will not be happy, will they? Yeah,
it depends what they do tonight, isn't it? They've got the semi-final. Well, they're in the final. It's an easy competition for them.
Win it. They won it the minute they entered it.
It's an interesting time for them in the Premier League tonight as well, because even though they're not playing, Forest they've got their game in hand against Brentford. At home, so you'd imagine they win that.
Forest have just fallen away, haven't they? It's a shame, really.
They're still getting the home points, though.
You look at someone like Bournemouth and Fulham, both fell away. You knew they would, but that they carried on for so long, you were thinking, they might. And it's like, they've fallen away again. Bournemouth, I'm particularly disappointing because I really like them. I like the way that they played, and they've kind of had the problem that Liverpool had last year, where they had loads of players injured. The players that came in did really well, and then the players came back who'd been unfit for large parts of the season, and then they've not been able to get up to speed. And you would obviously play them ahead of some of the others, so that's been the issue that they've had. Forest, I do. Forest a very different team to most of the others in the Premier League. I think there's only Everton, right? You've had a lower percentage of possession, is that right?
Forest don't have the ball.
Yeah. It's like when Everton played Forest, they were both like, "Oh, we don't want it." But Everton played really well that day and won. And we know how hard it is to go to Forest. If you've ever driven there, you'd know. Actually, Leicester's harder. So yes.
Why is it the East Midlands is so hard to get to?
Only from us. If you're in London, it's dead easy. It's up the M1. We got to go across, and it's for anybody who's outside.
Should we
of
just
England.
take a moment to enjoy?
Absolutely no idea what we're talking about.
Should we just take a moment as well to enjoy the fact that Sheffield United didn't get automatic promotion, so we're not going to have to go over the top. But fingers crossed,
they're probably going to get up anyway.
Surely it's one of the lower teams in form.
All I'll say, Leeds and Burnley are up, and Ipswich and Southampton and Leicester are down. So that's already two up for us in terms of our journeys. What was your question?
I was going to say Liverpool could deal a massive blow to Chelsea's Champions League hopes, because if Forest get, even if they draw tonight,
it's a much bigger game for Chelsea on Sunday than it is for Liverpool. But it'd be interesting to see what happens with Liverpool now, having had the pressure off for the first time in how long? Probably, I don't know.
January?
No. I'd said the pressure off probably since the last game of last season, and even then that was such an emotional game with Klopp leaving. So a Premier League game that doesn't really have a lot on it is unusual for Liverpool in recent times. And we saw what happened when they won it in 2020, when they were, let's just say that they were somewhat refreshed by the time they played Manchester City in the next game.
They didn't have it was a few days though, wasn't it?
It was a long time. Yeah, it was a long time. And City obviously had a point to prove. But it's a big game for Chelsea, and I think Liverpool, if they decide to take it as seriously as I think that they will, because you have to look at some of the training pictures and some of the images and the video. They look like a team that's gone, oh, thank goodness for that, we've done it. And I've seen in the past it can go one or two ways. I've seen when Liverpool won it in 1983, they took 2 points from the last 7 games because they finished that far ahead. Compare that to when they won it in 1990. I think they went to Coventry and won 6-1 on the last day. And then obviously in 2020, they had 2 difficult games at Man City and Arsenal. They should have won at Arsenal, to be fair. And they went to Newcastle and they went to Brighton and won. But then they had a couple of iffy ones, I think, at home against Burnley. Was it Villa? Did they draw with Villa, or am I making that up? No, they beat Villa. They beat Villa.
Yeah.
They beat Villa.
Curtis Jones scored that one.
They drew with
Burnley, wasn't it? Because they stood on Alisson's toes from a corner.
Exactly, yeah.
So are you expecting a hangover at the weekend or not?
But from me?
If you want, I know you're performing on
Saturday. Yeah, no, we're too far away for me to. I'll have to go to a drive, so no. I know that the trains are awful to Chelsea. Having to drive there, which is very unusual. I'm not impressed with that. Trains are terrible.
I'm trying to think if we drove when we went start of last year, wasn't it?
No, we didn't drive. We took the train. We took the train. Yeah, I've driven to Chelsea before though. I'm not expecting a hangover. No, as I said, I do think the pressure will be off, and I think, to be honest, I think it might just be a game where they're all trying to pass to Salah to try and score a million goals.
He doesn't actually score that many against Chelsea as well.
Oh, well, he scored
a couple.
He scored 2 seasons, a couple of seasons ago, didn't he? 2022, he definitely scored there. And he set one up in the first game of last season, didn't he, for Diaz?
Yeah, Diaz.
So, yeah, he doesn't score that many other than those that he scores and sets up.
Well, compared to, he scores, 15 or something ridiculous against United, similar against City. It's the one that drops off compared to the others.
He did play for them, I suppose, so there's probably a little bit of that to it.
We'll do lineups now.
Yeah. You reading that?
No, I've got the questions here, so from the chat on YouTube. So I was seeing if there was anything to ask you.
Has anyone said anything pertinent?
I think it's more just people agreeing with what we're saying, which is quite nice.
It's a rarity, isn't it? You want to say something ridiculous? Arsenal are still title favourites. There you go. How about that?
Who's your title favourite for next season?
It's Liverpool. It's Liverpool. If they then go and sign some more players, because they'll end up being stronger than they were this season.
Yeah, it's just people saying they'd like Harvey Elliott to stay, but if he doesn't play more, he might need to go. Basically, just repeating what we're saying and agreeing with, which is quite nice. And then
it's almost like everybody's really happy for once. It's like it's not good for social media fume. This Liverpool winning the league stuff, is it? And two players signing a contract.
We've got Abdul here going. We need FSG in the board.
Who?
Abdul.
Oh, I think something else then. Sorry.
We need FSG in the board to start planning for next season.
There we go. That's what I like. Yeah.
And which players will sell in the summer.
That's better. Yeah.
I'd imagine they've been planning that for quite some time.
I think they've been on it for a while. Yeah.
So yeah, lineups. How many changes did you make in that back five?
I wouldn't be surprised if Tsimikas played left back. I think.
I think he'd keep Robertson.
Actually, I don't think there's anything wrong with Robertson, but I just think he's just got to rotate them between now and the end of the season. So Tsimikas will be left back. I think Alisson plays all the games, by the way. So Alisson in goal, and it's not the game for Quanta, I don't think. So I think it'll be Canati and Van Dijk with Trent at right back.
And then it's just wait and see if Conor Bradley can come and do half an hour off the bench or not. Yeah, the only one I maybe disagree with is Robertson, because Tsimikas started the two before that, so it might be Robertson starts this one, then Tsimikas starts a couple.
But I think he might start Tsimikas because he'll play Robertson against Arsenal.
Touche. Into midfield.
I'm not going to see Endo yet. No. I think, but I will see Curtis Jones instead of Szoboszlai and play Gravenberch and McAllister.
Though that was the best Szoboszlai's played for a number of weeks last weekend, getting a couple of assists. Very energetic.
True. And he did play very well there the first game of last season. But no, I'm still not picking him.
Fair enough. I'll keep it unchanged just because I think you want to go and do well against Chelsea. You want to deal with them with a blow. And up front,
I love the fact we're not going to end up making any changes.
We're not. The front three.
The front three. I'm not going to change it either. Salah, Diaz, and Gakpo.
I might throw in Jota up front just for the sake of it. Though Gakpo was improved, he gets his goal. It's a bit harsh to drop any of the forwards when all three of them scored.
That's the thing. This is the other thing is that we talk about bringing in players, and you go, well, they're not going to do it there. They're not going to do it against Arsenal. You mentioned Brighton as being the one game that they might just end up playing the whole of everybody in one game against Brighton, just all of them.
As well, Gravenberch, Van Dijk, and Salah are still on for starting every game all season.
Yeah, I think the thing is with someone like, we know about Salah, he's definitely going to play all the games, and I think Van Dijk would quite like to be there. He's the captain, and Gravenberch, just for his own sake, it's a little bit of a test for him now because he hasn't played so often ever in his career, I don't think. Certainly not with this high level. And I think it'd just be interesting to see if he does play against someone who he was good as well against Tottenham. I mean, Tottenham were rubbish, weren't they? Let's be honest, in the second half. Mid-half, make it easy, but
that's what I've said for the last two games. It doesn't matter how Liverpool play. You can rely on Leicester to not put up enough of a fight, and you can rely on Tottenham not to be put up enough of a fight.
I mean, Tottenham was different. They got a big game covered, haven't they, tonight? Leicester, they kind of knew they were down. And I actually thought Leicester did all right up until a point. I can see why Leicester have gone. It's funny enough, in that performance, I could see why they came up and I can see why they're going down.
It's just that big gap between Premier League and Championship. Simon Cousins says, surely we should just give the midfield 2 months off given the amount of football they've played. It'd give us a massive advantage in the long term. Wonder what the sports scientists would say. Well, it makes it sound like the sports scientists have had nothing to say for the whole season when they've been playing every week.
Nope, nothing. Okay. Yeah, so, I can see. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, because we're so ingrained now into picking all these players, you still want them to win all the games, don't you? Even though they've already won the league, and
you want them to get over 90 points.
I mean, it would be good because that would be surely just silence the people who say it's not being a great Liverpool team and not being a great league, and it's like, well, as I did it on the podcast the other day, I could go through every single season and just destroy every single season, say that it wasn't a vintage season. Just go, Man City got 100 points one season. What was everybody else not trying?
We'll save that for an episode where we really need it to fill out time, take it to the corner. Score prediction.
3-2 to Liverpool.
2-1 Liverpool. If you'd gone for something more negative, I'd maybe gone for a draw. But if you're being positive, I feel I have to join you.
I feel like Chelsea are better than they have been. I think Chelsea have got a lot of good players and they just haven't been right. And
Cole Palmer's not played well for a while, has he?
well, he's been well done. He's now bound to score about 10 goals, isn't he?
Doesn't matter. League's won. How did they actually play against Everton last weekend, producer Ian?
Everton were poor. That was all I'll say.
No, the last half, and I saw the last half hour, and I thought Everton played on the fact that they were only 1-0 down. What's called? Was it 2-0 in the end?
1.
It got disallowed, didn't it? Sorry.
Moyes made some changes which
Yeah,
helped.
that's right.
But it still wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So, what do you think Chelsea will do against Liverpool?
I think they'll go for it. They've got to, haven't they? They've got to go and win.
Score prediction?
1-1.
You can tell he's an Evertonian, can't we? But yeah, I think that's all we've got time for today. I'll just do one last check of the comments. No, nothing new there. Thanks to
Professional.
Thanks to Doyle for joining me. We'll be back on.
Where are the others? Where are the others?
We'll be back on Bank Holiday Monday. Bank Holiday Monday, and you're
Who's
off.
in? Am I off?
You're off, I think. But the other two.
I think I'm in. Oh, am I off?
You might be off.
You
We'll have to go and check the rotor.
Check the rotor.
But yeah, we'll be back on Bank Holiday Monday to look over that trip to Stamford Bridge. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.